Take it away.
Okay, so here we go. Compañeros.
See.
Welcome to another edition of the SQL Data Partners Podcast. I am Carlos L. Chacon, and I am joined today by probably our most prolific guests. If Kevin and Eugene hadn't joined the podcast, then Sean and Jen McCown would be our most prolific guests, and they are with us here today. Welcome.
I think we've only been on a couple of times, haven't we? Or has it been a lot and I have no memory?
It's been like 3 or 4 for me, right?
That's right. So Sean, April 2016, episode 41. Jen, you were on in June of 2016, episode 46. Sean, you were back on in April of 2017. And I can't remember, I think it was both of you maybe. No, I have November 2017 and May of 2019.
Wow, look at us being all fancy and stuff.
And right up front, on my behalf, I would like to apologize to everyone for their choice to use video this time.
Shut up, you're adorable.
Yes.
Glad to be here, Carlos. Thank you.
Nobody watches it on YouTube anyway, right? So it's most of the listeners will be through audio only, which I think is.
Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned the video then.
It's a shame.
Forget it. We're not on video. No. Especially not me and my golden locks.
Strange child. So let's see. What are we talking about? What are we doing?
Well, this is the question. As you have been on, I guess before we get into our topic for today, I do have a couple of shout outs that I want to give, right? So folks who have been engaged with us in social media in some way. And our compañero shout outs today go to Jody Roberts, Lee Markham, Carol Brennan, Carol Herring, Marianne Pelletier, Becky Majola, Ryan Whitaker.
It's probably Pelletier.
Pelletier, there we go.
Too late.
Ryan
Yeah,
Whitaker,
we just let him roll with it.
Katie Lynn Dold, Joanna Leal, Belly Ahmed Habib, Russ Johnson, Frank Lavigne, Sandy Dion, Mohammed Ezra, Dabiri, Deepshika, Rajaguru, Bill Ramos, Kevin Mosman, Leslie Crowley, and Ted Akers. So thank you, compañeros. There we go. Thanks for engaging with us. Yes,
you're only bleeding a little bit.
An attempt was made. Well done.
Now,
right.
I would like to start off by saying I've been thinking about you guys a lot lately for some reason. So it's very fortuitous that you guys would have us back on right now. And
that's why we had the restraining order.
I know, right? And I am just so thrilled, and I mean this from my heart, that you guys made it through all of this mess, because everybody we know didn't.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, I'm so glad you guys made it through. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I do think we need to talk afterwards, because I actually had the same, when we originally reached out, we were kind of pinging on LinkedIn. I was like, man, we need to figure out how to do some business together. And so we probably won't talk about it on this episode, on this podcast, but we do need to follow up and connect with you guys, and let's make some business.
And I think about you guys every single time I teach somebody SMO.
Is that right?
Because that was one of the topics that you guys discussed previously, I presume. Again, I have no memory, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, so is that, I was curious as to why. I don't remember that being.
We didn't talk about SMO?
I think you might have.
We'll
figure it out.
He's just imputed every conversation he's ever had to this podcast.
Yeah,
like, you guys remember the episode about my mom and her birthday? Like, that really
that was messed up.
It has to be, because I talked to somebody on a podcast, and y'all are the only ones who talk to me. So even Jen won't talk to me most of the time.
Yeah, go ahead and tell Sean I'm not talking to him now either. So
this is me not talking to you.
All right, no, it's a joke, listening audience. Okay, so SMO, cool, business, awesome. Those are good things to talk about.
There we go. So what I originally, I guess, what we engaged in, and not to call you out or anything, Jen.
Oh,
No, please.
I believe there is a podcast, or not a podcast. There is a blog post you are going to be writing, or should have been writing, or was going to write, or thought about writing.
There's an aspirational blog post, yeah.
Aspirational blog post. So we're really here to help you flush out the ideas for your blog post.
Wow, oh my gosh, can I get this like on a regular basis, please? That would be the bomb.
There
This
we
is a
go.
whole new podcast is we're going to
That's
help you
funny.
with your blog post. Yes, please. Yeah, no, I had listened to and I think one of your posts had mentioned an episode from a little bit back where you talked about inventory, a server inventory, and I was like, oh great, I've been thinking about this, and I got on and you were talking about like discovery, like taking an inventory as opposed to keeping track of your servers over time, which is they're both valid, wonderful topics, but yeah, I have been more on the keeping up with over time. So I kind of wrote almost exactly that, I'm sure, to you, and that's what kicked this off, Sean. I don't even know if I told you that, but yeah. So in a nutshell, my experience with this over the years has been, some shops know exactly what they have. Because of very meticulous, anal retentive records kept in Excel for some reason. Some shops,
right?
It works, but the vast majority of the time that doesn't work. And so I'll get into a shop that's like, we don't know what we have. We're not 100% sure. Here's a document, but it's like 3 years old. Nobody's actually touched it so far as we know. And that's a lot more common in the places that I've been. And I'm actually going to call you out in a second, Sean, so you should probably stop chewing soon. And what I will be calling you out on is your experiences with the same kind of thing before you came up with your own solution. And of course, our solution is going to be, keeping track of all of the servers in a table in SQL Server because we're DBAs.
Sure.
The problem with that historically is that, okay, it's the same thing. You put it in a table, it's in a database, and the digital space is very nebulous. You don't necessarily keep a good mental map of these things, especially as an organization. And so it's almost as bad as keeping a list in SharePoint. I said it. I have said the word. I apologize. So Sean, you need to unmute and tell me your experiences with the same, like pre-DBO.server.
Pre what?
Pre the table that we use to keep track of.
I see. DBO.server. Okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So are we talking about maintaining a list, or are we talking about gathering a list?
Yeah, not discovery, because
Okay.
they did a good session on a good podcast on discovery.
Oh, good. So yeah, as far as maintaining, that's really hard, and it gets harder the more avenues we have, right? Because now we've got AWS and Azure, and I believe who else is it that just got in the game? Was it Oracle that just started up a virtual service, and somebody else too? Just like, hey, we've been missing out on this. So the more services we get, the harder it's going to be, right?
Sure.
And even it's made even worse. And this kind of crosses over into discovery a little bit too, right? With different network segments being, not having permissions, and maybe even different, and especially with the cloud, right? Having different VPNs that you have to go through to get to certain servers. So even like maintaining that to make sure that you have a current list of servers and they're all up and pingable and whatnot is getting harder and harder. Even for me, and I write that software, right?
Sure.
I face these challenges all the time. The VPN is the new challenge that I'm just like, guys,
But I hereby redirect you back into.
Yeah, I know. So, I think it is a worthwhile effort to have some database of record that's online that everybody can see, everybody being, you and your DBA staff, right? Because,
Sure.
screw everybody else.
Sure.
So none of your business what SQL boxes I got.
All right. Now, it's probably worth mentioning, because it's been a hot minute, right? Since May of 2019, right? And all of a sudden we're here in June of 2022. So let's go to the Wayback Machine, and let's bring everybody up to speed. So those who maybe haven't gone all the way back to episode 169, which you're forgiven if you haven't, but there's still time to go and do so. And we should talk about sort of how, I guess, the connection, right? How we got to know you guys.
Sure, yeah.
So ultimately, right through the community, we went on SQL Cruise, and Sean and Jen were working on the problem. This very problem is like, hey, I have all these databases that I need to keep up with, right? That I need to patch. I need to track things like index maintenance. I want to track, my integrity checks. I want to track all these things, and too complicated, right? Like, yes, there are scripts out there that will do those pieces, but really what I need to do is I need to keep track of this stuff, right? So when was the last time it happened? Where am I? And where perhaps do I want to be? So they started
thousands of other things.
That's right. So they started tackling some of this problem and started putting together what at first, right, was scripts, and then it has migrated. And admittedly, I haven't seen it. This is where I guess I'll say we need to catch up, right, and do some things. But they've, Sean is like, I'm a developer. I can do here. I am developer. Hear me roar, right? And he slapped a front end onto this thing. Okay, and so now there's there's a program that's available through the Minionware concepts. And again, you guys can take
Sure, it's okay.
That's one of the things we probably need to work through. But this is one of the things that they've been working on, is how do I keep track of everything and kind of where it is, so that I can see it at least in a snapshot or in an easy to consume way where everything is.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, let me talk about almost everybody's favorite little, I'll put technology in quotes, method. There we go. Everybody's favorite method of managing these guys is CMS.
Sure.
And I hear CMS all the time. And CMS just isn't. And
for our listeners, as you're thinking through that, Sean, right? So the content management server, right? The ability to connect to multiple servers at once. There we go.
Right. So CMS it doesn't scale, and it's not flexible. That's what I'm looking for.
There we go.
Yeah, I knew you were looking for the word scale.
Okay. So the problem is with CMS, you can register all your servers in there, and you can have a fully registered. You can have a centralized list, right? So that everybody can see all of the servers that you've got, and even by category, right? But you've got to predefine every category you would ever need to use, right?
Sure.
So let's say that I've got
which bucket does the server go into?
Yeah. I've got different environments, right?
Sure.
I've got different applications. I've got different regions.
Yeah.
I've got all kinds of.
Server could have more than one bucket, and with CMS, unlimited.
Exactly.
Usually does.
And the problem with that is, if I need to update my creds, then I have to go update it in every single bucket that's there, that it belongs in, right? It's not centralized. It's not a centralized server that I just put into different leaves of the tree, right? So, and you still don't have an inventory of, box specs and patches and all that kind of stuff, right? Sure. And you don't have applications that may be tied to, and contact information and all this stuff that you need to know about your servers. All you get is a list of servers in CMS, and that's it.
That was going to be one of my questions. It's been long enough since I've touched anything having to do with CMS. That is it something where you actually could keep a full list? Oh, okay. That the full question was going to be, by the way, a full list of servers, and have that like shareable among team members, like everyone has access to the same list and can update it and stuff.
Oh yeah, you can have it. Yeah, that's the whole point of CMS is that you put it on a single box and everybody has access to it.
Sure.
Yep.
But
and
yeah, I remember it well
completely
enough to remember
useless.
it's not super duper scalable. I remember
Right.
I remember feelings, and I absolutely remember
Right.
going, "Oh, I'm done. I'm not good with this."
And
But yeah,
yeah,
so
it's not completely useless. It comes in handy, especially for smaller to medium sized shops where, that kind of thing isn't a very big deal, which I really don't work in small shops. So,
but this brings us back around full circle to my question, which is, what has your experience been, Sean, with, and now I'm interviewing my fellow
I
guest.
love when you do the work for us. I can just go get a
Hey,
snack.
It's almost like we've done lots of videos teaching and a 9-year web show. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, so like, has that been your experience too? Is like people putting stuff in SharePoint and Excel and random Word documents,
yeah.
and then CMS as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And CMS is harder to code against.
Mm.
I thought about writing Minion against CMS, but when you if you do something like PowerShell iterate through all those things, it was orders of magnitude slower than reading records from the table.
Mm.
It was horrendous.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
a
they fixed it by now, but who
experience
cares?
No, they haven't.
Okay, there you go then. Right.
That's
And when
good
you're
to
trying to get
Not a feature that's gotten a lot of love, right? I don't
I know,
recall
right?
that being in the SQL Server 2022 feature update, right?
Oh yeah, no, that was like, wasn't the whole point of the new release was, big CMS? No, I'm being sarcastic.
Maybe one of these days they'll make PBM worth a damn too.
So actually, now I'm curious. I've been picking on Sean. I want to pick on you three guys. What has your experience been similar in, like, how do you manage that? Are we just, crapping all over CMS and it's your darling, or I'm waiting to see the wince in Kevin's eyes, actually.
I mean, there's a tiny amount of wince, but it's reasonable. Sean is right that, hey, hang on, let me say that again for the recording so that Sean can clip it for later.
That's already his ringtone as of right this moment.
Right.
Sean is right. Sean is
So,
right.
as you get a larger number of servers in that list, yeah, it slows down considerably. We've got a couple hundred servers, couple hundred instances of SQL Server, and they show up in organized a couple different ways. Probably in total about 500 entries. And opening up the central management server listing that first time around, 10-second wait. And this is a UI lock as well in Management Studio, which means it's just sitting there. You can't click anything else. It looks like it's frozen up. You start wondering if I've made poor decisions in my life. Fortunately, before you go too far down that road, it eventually loads and, okay, wow, I can get back to work.
That description just stressed me out, and I'm having to use like active calming techniques to be like.
And you still don't have any more information about your servers than you had before it expanded.
That is true.
That's true.
So that's not fun. Well, Carlos, Eugene, like, again, what's your, not necessarily like, please continue crapping all over CMS, but like, what's your experience with this aspect of like inventory?
No, I mean, I don't have a good answer, right? Because like at my last job, the options were, Excel spreadsheet, SharePoint list, or, tools like CMS or what have you, right? And like we had gone through all of them to some degree or another.
Sure.
Now some of that was biased by the fact that we had a SharePoint department, so we were, right?
Somebody was paying attention to it.
Sometimes solutions looking for problems, but I don't know. I don't feel like, and maybe Miniware is a solution, but I feel like a lot of times there isn't a great solution for this. I mean, a lot of the times it's you do a scan for that initial discovery to make sure you're in compliance with licensing, and you find out you have 10 versions of Express set up because some software vendors like, so we need a SQL database for our UPS tracking software. And you're like, all right, we'll spin up Express. And then when you have to move it or update, you're like, so what was the SA password for this copy of Express you set up? You know what I mean? So my experience has been not having a proper inventory, right?
Yeah, but this is why, not just like, let's prove I'm right, but I'm genuinely curious to see someone out there has a better solution. I haven't run across it outside of our own little, circle.
We should add something like this to Minion.
So this
maybe like a server table.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. No.
I get that. Oh, okay, I get that now.
So well, yeah, this is a big, rah-rah Minion Enterprise thing. It's also like, I mostly did want to talk about like the basic principle, which and all of this, by the way, I always have to shout out Sean because he's the visionary. We'll probably talk about later. He's the one that got me into SQL in the first place, and then just absorbing these lessons from using Minion Enterprise again and again and again is the one trick that doctors hate is honestly your inventory has to be something you use, not something you force yourself to use, but something that is the center of whatever solution you wind up coming up with. Like every DBA who's in their position long enough starts scripting automation, right? They start going, you know what? This is this huge gap in the SQL solution is not being able to deal with lots of different servers at once. And so people start doing, back in the day, DB script, and now PowerShell and just all of these other things, lots of different tools, lots of different community solutions. And yeah, whatever, if you do roll your own, it needs to be rolled around, I think, a central list of servers that then you're forced to keep up to date because, well, my entire system would collapse without it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, so there's a related question to that. In your experience, like, what is the number of servers that you see DBAs managing, right? Because I remember Brent Ozar had like some sort of pyramid way back, right? Where like if you're dealing with 1,000 servers or 100 servers, you're just trying to keep the lights on at that point, right? You're trying to make sure the stuff is automated, patched, and whatever. And then if you actually care about performance, or you care about performance tuning, you care about some of these other things, then you're talking about a much smaller number of servers. That, or you're basically an automation wizard and you're finding some way to run the same PowerShell script for every single server, which it could be, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about keeping track of all this stuff, like what's the scale, what's the scope in your mind, or what's the ratio of like servers to person? You know what I mean?
That's actually something else. Did we talk about this recently? Because that's something very, very specific that has been on my mind. Is that idea of, I think I was talking to you about this, Sean. Databases are very, a SQL environment to me is very much like, there are parallels between the human level and the software level in that, like, if SQL performance is going down, the first thing people tend to do is throw hardware at it, right? But there's a limit to how much that'll help. Like, it's great at first, like, yay, we have a bazillion, gigabytes of RAM and all this, cores and so forth. But yeah, past a certain point, you can't hardware out bad code or bad design. It's just not going to happen. And in the same way, you can absolutely throw more DBAs and more DBAs at an environment of 1,000 instances. But not only is there a point at which that's not going to be as effective, companies always stop way short of that line because DBAs are expensive. So yeah, awesome. Please have more than one DBA for 1,000 instances.
Right.
But yeah, so and what the level is, I mean, there are shops that have an instance, and there are shops that have 1,000, 1,500 instances, and there's not a line, I think, where it goes from being manageable to unmanageable, but there's a range,
right,
somewhere between 5 and I would say 30.
Yeah, because like at my last job, I was an accidental DBA, and it was a very small part of my job theoretically, right? And so the number of servers I was dealing with, I could count on my fingers, right? Because it was a small business and that sort of thing. And
that was even after the Thresher accident.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Little does his company know he's an accidental DBA now.
And so like, I could probably get away with just having a OneNote or something like that. But where the SharePoint thing came in handy is we had a help desk. And so having some of those centralized notes somewhere that other people could access, the help desk could access, was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for me, if you're one person, you're managing like 5 SQL servers, maybe you don't need this centralized managed system, but you still need some kind of note system if you want to, like, I don't know, ever take a vacation.
Yeah, it certainly does not feel as pressing, I will say,
Right.
if you have 5 instances. But I actually just had every month we have a bullet journal workshop where some friends get together online and we're like, oh, hey, what tricks have you been using? And I have literally just talked myself out of whatever it was I was talking about. What did you just say? Because you said something, Kevin. Eugene.
Something about clutches.
Wait, what?
That's not helpful.
What did I say about what? Sorry, trying to.
Yeah, what did you just say?
Who did what with the what now?
Because I literally don't remember.
I was talking about how in my last job I was an accidental DPA, and I could count the number of servers on my fingers, and so I could get away with OneNote. And SharePoint, where we used it, was useful because it was a way for help desk to have some information about the servers and that sort of thing. So, at smaller scales, you can get away with just a simple note-taking system, I think, right? And it's less clear when you need the centralized list. Like I feel like Minionware might be overkill for something but like you want to be able to take vacations, so you need something publicly accessible.
That was it. Thank you so much for doing that full recap.
Sure,
and yes, audience, that was truly necessary because my brain. Yeah, vacations. One of the things that I was talking about was like the idea of a run book, right? For a SQL run book, just says, here is absolutely everything. And here, fellow DBA or accidental DBA, is all of the information you possibly need. Don't bother me while I'm in Cancun. Bye. And so that's kind of the direction that I was heading was, at the very least, knowing where all the SQL instances are buried. And then beyond that, the particulars.
So I'm curious, do you have any thoughts about the idea of what we used to call runbook becoming an actual runbook these days, like the whole like SQL notebook idea and that kind of stuff, right?
Again, I think that's something that, and I'm going to sound like a one-note pony. Yes, I'm going to mix metaphors.
I love seeing ponies. Go on.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to quickly forget what it was we were talking about again.
Runbooks, actual runbooks where you click run and then they book.
Should absolutely
leading to Jupyter notebooks.
Yeah, right. Should be part of that automation. Like some of you guys might know I have a full hour-long session on comments, which are documentation.
Sure.
Comments are documentation. And back again. And that's the philosophy that I want is if you're going to be a data professional, then keep the data about the data in a database, keep your documentation, make a help system for your own environment, right? And so, okay, now we have this central server. We've got a list of all of our instances in this table. We can run, XYZ code.help. And that'll give us a starting point, and it can be as complex or as simple as you want. But yeah, I love the idea of a run book. I love it a lot more for almost every possible scenario you could name as a part of a system. Because we're so lucky to be data professionals. I think about this almost every day. So lucky to be able to go, oh, you know what? I just got this list of things and I want to, munge the data and put it into a table and do this to it and pull it back in. I do that for like grocery lists and stuff. It's ludicrous because I can. I absolutely can.
Outlook just gave me the podcast alert.
Oh, well, you should probably get on there.
Yeah. Well, so one of the other challenges, or I don't know if challenges, nuances, is that we are also not the only stewards of the environment because there are more shocking, right, servers than just database servers out there. You've got other software pieces, and I was trying to remember what Microsoft's was. I was looking for it here because and now all I can see is software asset management, SAM, which does not sound correct to me.
That sounds familiar, but go ahead.
But there are these other third parties that again are trying to the whole asset management industry. Right, in terms of keeping up with all these pieces. I mean, even your OS levels and group policy, right? Things of that nature. And so it can get a little, I don't know, is kludgy the right word? Or in terms of who owns it, right? Who owns it? Who's responsible for the list? It's not quite the same, but even the monitoring vendors are getting into the game, a bit. So I guess I don't know that we've talked about this publicly yet, but we've become a Redgate partner and really like their the SQL Monitor we're kind of moving to that as kind of the de facto monitoring tool for our managed services providers. And one of the things that is really nice about it is that they keep up with the patching levels for us. So we can go in there to the configuration. Now, I have to create the inventory for them, right? Because ultimately I'm paying, right? You want me to monitor? I have to pay to play, right? But they can give me that information and be like, hey, by the way, right? You're out of band, or you can set the the rules in terms of how far behind you want to be, but.
Yeah, and I would encourage folks, like, if they do either get our system or again roll their own, it does behoove us, again, because we're data professionals, we really like data, big on data.
Sure.
And so it's nice to be able to say not only, oh well, we've got these SQL instances and they're at this version, but also, oh yeah, we've got all these, like, I just want to say non-SQL instances and leave it at that, all of these Windows servers, and here are their OS levels and their patches, and here's how much disk space and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of great. There are some places that probably have teams that keep track of assets, but I'm not going to bet on the majority of companies having something like that. Almost seems to fall under, I was going to say data governance, but no. Kind of, that's another one of those terms that gets defined a number of different ways.
Depending on what product is available from Microsoft at any given time.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, even so just thinking about the data, well, I guess we get access to it, right? But I was talking with another customer earlier today. So the Windows Software Update Server, right? WSUS, whatever the acronym is, right? That's another one of those. It's like, hey, let me take care of your patching for you, and so there are a myriad of different options available.
Right.
So I suppose
who owns it is whoever cares, kind of. And as a DBA, I'm like, just give me all the data, bring it in.
Sure. So this goes back right to Eugene's comment in terms of there are just lots of services out there to do a million different things. So the question really is how can you self-define your needs and then take advantage of the right tool there. So perhaps let me approach you all about that. So again, they're going to be edge cases. I get that, right? But Sean said earlier, hey, I don't work with small companies. We've said 5 instances is too small. So in terms of, hey, here's where we're seeing our customers, right? Again, averages. We're kind of mishing all of them together. Sure. What's kind of the threshold for when folks engage with your tooling?
Well, actually, I said I don't remember if Sean said between 5 and 30 becomes overwhelming, but that doesn't mean that, like, our tools, that any given tool is like, oh well, that's overkill for a shop this small. No, I think a shop that has an instance, I'm going to stick with that, may need us less. But there's all kinds of stuff. There are 1,001 things. I mean, there are 1,001 things that a DBA wants to keep track of, or once they learn enough, will want to keep track of, right? Sure. And it becomes extraordinarily difficult. We all have to pick our battles, as it were, and say, okay, I don't actually have time to tune every single database, every single query, even on one instance necessarily. So I'm going to focus on, keeping the lights on, as I think Eugene said earlier, and making sure backups are valid, and, just the key things.
So I get that, right? But I guess I'm going to kind of push you on the question a little bit, right? Yeah,
please.
So how many servers do you think, again, maybe typical, I'm not sure if typical is the right word, right? But how many servers does it make sense to be like, hey, y'all, there's a new tool that will help, or not new, but there is a tool that will help you keep track of some of these things that we've just talked about. And it makes sense for you to approach your boss at X.
It's a good question.
So I've mostly stayed out of this conversation because this is so squarely in my wheelhouse. Nobody else would ever get a chance to say anything. I've got
courteous.
Big opinions, and I've got a lot of stuff to talk about here.
You're going to hear all of it, people. Or else.
Right now.
Nope. I'm gonna try to confine this answer to the question at hand.
Okay.
So I'm going to start by asking you guys a question, and then we'll go from there based off of your answer. What is an enterprise?
Oh gosh.
I mean, it was a really
USS
cool
Enterprise?
ship.
Yeah.
I was thinking the U.S. Navy version, but
Oh.
you do you, Carlos.
See, so I teach enterprise management, and this is what I start my class with. What is an enterprise? Because if we can't agree on that, then, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that the enterprise is ultimately the infrastructure, you're the organization that you're responsible for managing. That's the enterprise, right?
Absolutely. That's
I would
good
say
enough.
an enterprise is a business big enough that every department has at least 3 people.
That's definitely one way to,
All right.
to put it.
Kevin, do you have another answer, or can I go with one of those two?
Go ahead with those because
That's fine. I'm not
enterprise
your
is a
pappy. You don't
very
owe me an
nebulous
answer.
concept that can be anything from, hey, I run something out of my garage. I sell lemonade on the street to I run IBM. And they're all
Kevin's
enterprises in
answer-
some fashion.
Kevin's
It's a
answer
firm. It's a
is-
way of reducing externalities by internalizing certain exchanges on a market.
No, his answer is if you have to go through procurement to sell your software, it's an enterprise.
My answer is if you haven't read Ronald Coase, we're going to talk about firms.
Right. So my answer is if you have to ask, you probably can't afford one. So for the purposes of what we're discussing specifically, an enterprise is defined as anything I don't feel like doing manually. Now, you guys say, is it 1 server? Is it 5 servers that, people usually come to us for? The answer is, it depends, right? So back in the early nuts, I was the only DBA in an absolutely huge company, and I had a handful of servers that had 17,000 plus databases on them apiece. And they were identical because the company had no concept of multi-tenant databases. So every time I did anything on that server to any of the databases, I had to do it over 17,000 times, and that was on a handful of servers, right? So if you have to maintain, maintain backups and maintain other maintenance and indexes, and you have to maintain patches and all that stuff on 17,000 databases that just happen to be on a single server, that kind of sounds like a single server enterprise to me, because that's an awful lot of manual work if you don't have something to script it, right? And if you've got the right scripts, what's the difference between having 17,000 databases on one server or one database across 17,000 servers, right? If you have to do something to every one of those servers, set a database setting or add a user to a database or something like that, right? What's the difference if it's scripted? So the answer isn't as easy as a number of servers. It's the amount of work that has to be done and what you and how closely you want to be able to monitor those servers and those databases and whatever you've got going on, right? I've been on servers that have that many databases and literally thousands of jobs. So even managing that many jobs and job schedules is absolutely ludicrous, right? And it was still a single box. So, getting the number of servers isn't really the right question to ask.
But when in doubt, 17.
For us mere mortals, right?
I'm going to stick by that. But I do like, Sean, you do have a way of putting things elegantly sometimes, and then I forget it, and then you say it again, and it's like, oh yeah, that. Anything I don't feel like doing by hand, or if you want to put it more professionally, I suppose, anything that is cumbersome to do by hand, too cumbersome for the data team,
Right.
Well,
Well,
it's
in
funny
my-
because. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say it's funny because there's this gradient that I feel like we're ignoring, right? Because we're talking about, okay, whenever there's enough work involved that it makes sense to automate. But a lot of what small businesses do is just lower the amount of work by lowering their standards, right? If we don't have to apply updates, then the amount, how frequency you have to do the updates is real small, right?
That's when they bring me. That's when they bring me in, when they lower their standards.
Yeah. Right.
No,
But
that's an excellent.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
cases where it's like, okay, backups are running, people aren't complaining about performance. I don't want to apply updates because I don't want to have to worry about it. So, the amount of interaction required by the DBA, which is, some poor IT schmuck who has the title, may be lower than, if they were kind of rigorously monitoring and tuning. We're just doing the baseline.
Well, and if it's a smaller shop and nobody's complaining, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. So you get hit with slammer, but yes.
I'm making a face here.
I've had jobs where there were servers that I never even touched. I never even connected to, because I never got a backup report on them. I never had any complaints.
Okay, I have a thing on this very briefly, and that is, you're absolutely right. Is that SQL Server can be extremely resilient, especially in those much smaller applications.
Resilient. Let's not go crazy. There's a large margin for error.
Okay, there's a that, but anyway, but it's very much like a car. I love car metaphors for SQL because this one is especially apt. You buy a car. You've got the car. You don't really do maintenance on the car, and it's running fine. And also, you can just keep driving that car and putting gas in it for half of forever. But there will indeed come a day.
Right.
Ask me how I know. When the engine will seize up and fly apart because you never put any new oil in it.
Right.
You see, I prefer a woman metaphor for SQL, and the exact same thing applies.
Absolutely, shut up before we go somewhere horrible.
Oh
no,
man!
but
thank you,
but no,
Jen, for
serious.
being here. Right?
Yay! This is.
Did she just threaten violence?
How much diesel are you putting in people? That's not safe at all.
So Jen, that's actually something completely different, right?
Okay.
Because we're talking about a server that has maintenance routines on it. It's being backed up. It's being checked DB'd, and nobody's complaining. So there's no reason to look any further.
I guarantee you, in that circumstance, and you know this, if those of you who listen to the audio, I'm pointing my finger aggressively at the screen, and I'm going to stop now. You know that, backups are going, everything's smooth. They're running check DBs. Guarantee you they're not alerting on check DBs.
Right. It's whatever the maintenance plan wizard set up when they installed the server.
Why do you hurt me, Eugene? Why? Why would
the truth hurts, Jen. The truth hurts.
I see. I still think in terms of I'm still thinking in terms of me being in charge of a small environment and having everything centralized. So I know for a fact I don't need to touch that box because I haven't gotten any alerts on it.
Yeah. No. See, that's the thing. Is you're making assumptions.
You're not average.
So, and then again, Carlos, and the answer to your question is either 17 or anything I don't feel like doing by hand. And those are both, I think, cromulent answers, and one's more elegant.
Oh, that's right.
We have opinions.
Boy, that wasn't roundabout at all.
Circuitous,
if you will.
I'm just kind of closing the loop is all.
Circuitous, circumlocutory.
Okay, so we do need to wrap up at some point, but I feel like it would behoove us and our listeners, right?
Right.
So take us through the last 3 years. Like, so what are the big updates to Minionware in terms of what are we doing now that we weren't doing before?
Well, something I want to call out, and I think this is actually older than 3 years, but nobody actually, half of nobody knows about it. Sean, I don't know when you put this feature in that, you know how some auditors insist on screenshots of security, and how that also becomes quickly ludicrous if you have more than one server with 2 databases, or sometimes even then. Sean, you automated that, and I don't remember when it was. But that's one of the things that Minion Enterprise does do.
I don't either.
You automate
We'll say
screenshots?
We
Yes.
do.
That's a strange kind of amazing, because I definitely
I
did
can
work
take-
for a customer where our SOX compliance was, here's a screenshot of some extended events Eugene set up on 2008 R2 to show that nobody was fussing around with admin privileges. So
So
that's a
I've-
special kind of amazing.
So
Good.
Minion can, you can take screenshots of an individual server role, of all the server roles, of all the database roles, and it'll put them in dated, numbered pictures in a folder. And you could do that across 1,000 servers with 40,000 databases without taking up any extra of your time. It takes about 30 seconds for you to get it going, and then just let it go as long as it takes. And it'll just sit there and just take pictures.
Yep. And I bring it up because that literally came up like half an hour ago. Somebody posted on Twitter, and then Jeff Rush, bless him, was like, oh, hey, doesn't Minion do this? And I was like, why, yes, it does. Anyway, that's one of the...
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
I'll say that's one of the weirder features. It's only a weird feature just because it's a weird requirement for some audits.
Sure.
But one of the things that we are working on right now is a health check module, which, being able to run just your own set of metrics and say, okay, this is what I, as the DBA, think are the important things. That's one of the things that we're including in, and it's in beta now, is to say, okay, here's just a standardized audit that you just run, and it again goes across your entire environment, whether that's 2 instances or 2,000, but also to be able to create your own. Say, yeah, okay, externally they care about these things, but internally these are the 10 metrics that I really care about on a week-to-week basis.
Right.
So yeah, being able to just kind of define your own health check and have it run automatically on whatever interval you want. So there's 2 things.
Well,
anything else?
Oh yeah.
Well, anything else you want to call out?
Yeah. So we're increasing our cloud footprint exponentially. But not only that, I've got I'll say in beta right now, but it's kind of alpha really. So if you're on our maintenance routines, then you can set up global defaults as to how you want to handle it when new releases come out, and it will automatically go out and upgrade your entire environment of the Minion maintenance routines for you, or not, depending on how you see fit to do that. And I had something else really big on my plate that, oh yeah, this is the one that I haven't tied into the product yet, but I've got the underpinnings. And so it's been a long time coming, but I've got an in-app password manager that will not only let you manage your SQL passwords, but it ties them to individual boxes or individual databases. So you don't have to go hunting through a random database or a random password manager for it, right? It has your SA account right there by the server, and you'll just be able to click it and go, there it is. Or you'll be able to click it, or you'll be able to right click it and connect to that server as that user if it's, something you have to connect with the SQL account for, right?
Nice.
And along with that, I'm also looking at timed accounts. So, and as a matter of fact, you can do that now. It's just not as automatic, but you can do it now. Where, let's say you've got a consultant that's going to come in for a couple weeks. Well, you can set Minion to disable and or delete his account after 2 weeks on all the boxes he's got access to. Let's say he's got access to, 70 boxes in your shop, right? Yeah, go ahead.
That's cool.
Wherever you see him, dump it after 2 weeks.
I'm not sure I heard about that one. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
back to you.
Yeah, I've got, like I said, you can do that now, but it's not as automatic.
Sure. Yeah.
We have overwhelmed them.
My goal is to take I hate to say work on the back end of stuff, but almost every task is a bookend, right? And everybody only ever worries about the front of the bookend. I'm going to help you create these accounts. I'm going to help you create these jobs. I'm going to help you create a maintenance plan, right? But it's the other bookend. Well, what if that account needs to be deleted? What if that job needs to be disabled on certain boxes? What if that maintenance routine needs to be checked on, right? So not very many people work on that other bookend. See, these guys are bookends, right? And definitely things like
humans love creating. We're not big on maintaining.
Right.
Or finisher.
And one thing that I can't stand is like to disable a job for maintenance and then have to remember to go back in there and turn it off or turn it back on.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right? When my system should do it for me. Right? That's the other side of that bookend. So that's the kind of stuff I like to do with Minion, is to make sure that those bookends are, make sure that you close the parentheses.
Oh, yes. That's essential.
So
there you go. That makes sense. Yeah. So as always, compañeros, right? If particularly those of you who are using it and you like it, right? Let us know. We'd love to get some of that feedback, right? How you're keeping up with inventory, or if there's other options that you feel are compelling, right? We'd like to know those as well, because again, I mean, one of the great things about community is that everybody does things a little bit differently, and I think Jen, actually, you put out something on LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken, about just connecting with people. Hey, what's new? What's new in your world? And,
yeah, what are you obsessing on right now? Yeah,
that's right. What are you obsessing on right now? So we'd very much like to hear that feedback as well. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead, and it has been a long time, and I know you have been on, but we are going to do SQL Family.
All right.
Ooh.
Okay.
And before we start, understand that there is so much on this topic that I didn't say today.
Oh, sure. That's right. That's right.
I just want it to be said that I kept my mouth shut a lot.
And
it doesn't seem like it.
We appreciate you not making this an actual full day pre-con. Well done. Good job.
There we go. Yes, your medal is in the mail. So we are going to start with what would you do if you had to change careers? Jen, ladies first. We'll start with you.
Sure. I will say I got these questions in advance. Thank you so much for letting me think about this in advance. And I still wasn't able to come up with anything other than buy the coffee shop down the road because it's for sale, and work there because it's the coolest place ever. And I love the town that I'm in. So I'm just going to go with that. I'm going to buy the coffee shop if I couldn't be a DBA/CEO anymore.
Okay, there we go.
John?
So we didn't talk about these at all, did we?
You and I have not talked about this, no.
And this dovetails perfectly into what I know for a fact I would do. I would probably bake. I'd be a baker.
That's right. Oh my God.
I'd do bread.
Right.
Okay, forget all that stuff about Minion. We're going to go do food service. Bye.
I do
backup careers.
I do bread now, and I'm getting pretty good at it. And I think I could hold my own with the professional baker.
There we go. I can only do bread in the winter time. Too much cooking in the summer. My air conditioning can't keep up with all that bread baking. So
slow bake it outside.
Oh, there we go. All right. Next time we get together, you have to show me how to do that. What's one thing that can instantly make your day better?
Now that I'm in Colorado, going outside. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to be here. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah.
Getting to work from home.
Oh, yes.
And I've worked from home for over 10 years now. And
it's still great.
I never hit an office, and it's still great. No matter what's going on with code or with emergencies or whatever, my day is always right as rain if I'm working from home.
Okay.
No traffic, man. Traffic used to just send my blood pressure through the roof.
Start off with a little road rage in the morning, right?
Oh, dude, you have no idea.
Better than coffee.
I think I have some inkling, but I'll take your word for it. What's your go-to song when you need to boost your mood?
that's a trick question because that doesn't work for me. But
Trick question.
a song that I listen to when I'm in a good mood. This is going to be really weird. "In a Week" by Hosier, which is essentially a love song about won't it be great if we could get really old together and be dead together, which like it's really macabre, but in a very lovely, lovely way.
Okay, well, there we go.
Lately, I've been really fond of "September" by Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's got some jam, boy. That has some jam.
You're welcome
cannot
for
be
the
in a bad
earworm.
mood when that song is playing, right? It's just
That's
You
true.
can't stay still, right? It's one of those songs that you just can't stay still when it plays.
It's very much a, oh, my guinea pig is sick. Oh my God, I love this one.
yeah, that's right.
And I've still got a bunch of cactus needles in my leg too. So, and if I can't stay still, then I fell on the mountain this morning and got cactus all up down my side and on my leg, and I still digging them out of my leg.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever had, but it's all right.
The things you had
Carlos.
to endure to be here today, right? Thank you, Sean. What's the weirdest thing on your bucket list?
Again, had a little trouble with this one, but just one of the things that occurred recently, I was out on a hike yesterday and I was like, man, sometime I want to go to Japan and hike because they've got some beautiful, beautiful areas out there. I've seen pictures and stuff. So hiking in Japan is a weird quote unquote thing on my bucket.
Sure.
I don't really have a bucket list because I do what I want to do, but hiking in Japan sounds great.
Yeah, I knew you'd be down for that. Like I said, we have to talk about this.
I had a fairly full earlier life, so I'm a lot more content than most people are.
Okay. There you go.
I never hit like a midlife crisis or anything where I felt
you
like
did.
I
You
hadn't
went
done
vegan.
enough. Oh, Jesus.
It counts. It totally counts.
Or for Carlos, oh, hey, Cristo.
Oh my God.
Is he
He
here?
speaks English too.
Okay, so last question for you today.
Yes.
What's your favorite ice cream topping?
A brownie and a shot of espresso.
Ugh.
Yes, I'm counting that as a topping. That's the Death Star dessert that's at, I know you don't like coffee, at Spiral Diner in Texas. It's beautiful. Oh my God.
There we go.
Geez, that's a really hard one for me to answer because since I've gone vegan, the toppings are not as prevalent as they used to be. Because Oreos are fine, but I'm going to go ahead and say, oh, I know what it is. It's those lovely, lovely cherries that they have in that nice thick syrup, those Italian cherries that they have at Pachugo on top of their custard, right? This is these lovely thick cherries, kind of like maraschinos, except they're dark cherries, and they're in really thick syrup, and they swirl it all over the top. Oh my God, that's exquisite. I got some for the house. Stuff is exquisite.
And now everybody here wants a sundae. So this is a good question to end on, but oh my God, what have you done, Carlos? Why?
When you come home, bring me some Sunday stuff, and we'll do a Sunday tonight, and I'll put my cherries on it.
I love this man. I do. I gotta say.
Send us a picture.
It's just their name is escaping me right this second. I know what they're called. They're a specific type, and it's escaping me right now.
We'll put it on Twitter. Let's let him close down because we're gonna run long talking about ice cream.
There we go. Hey.
And your point would be.
Right.
Well, Jen and Sean, thanks again for coming back. Glad we could tie the bow on this 3-year hiatus, right? And
it's been wonderful.
That's right. We always enjoy having you here and talking about some things, and getting different takes and how we can go about taking over the world one day at a time, right?
It's like Pinky in the Brain. That's right.
Okay, should folks want to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
On Twitter, we are at Hey Minionware. You got to put the hey in front for some unbeknown reason. It's our names. If you want to schedule time with us on Calendly, Jennifer McCown or Sean McCown. Same on LinkedIn, Jennifer McCown and Sean McCown. So lots of different ways to get a hold of us.
And I can be found at KimpoDBA.
On Twitter, yep.
On Twitter.
And that's
on the Twitters.
KENPODBA.
Mr. Eugene?
You can find me at SQLGene on Twitter.
Mr. Kevin?
So my contact information is actually in your servers table. You just have to go look for it.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. That reminds me. I got an
like
error
the kind
off
of jackass
of
thing I'd say.
that. This is why we like Kevin too.
I know, right?
Compañeros, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am at Carlos L. Chacon. If you're coming by because you're listening to the podcast, just let me know when you hit that connect button. And amazingly enough, I will respond faster. So thanks again for tuning in today. That's going to do it for today's episode. Our show notes are going to be at SQLDataPartners.com/inventory or at SQLDataPartners.com/248, as this is episode 248. So thanks again, Jen and Sean, for being here. It's nice to catch up with you. Glad that you are both doing well. And compañeros, we'll see you on the SQL Trail. Bye now.
Bye.
My dogs are about to bark again, too.
SQL Data Partners.